With training camp here, we're getting our first extended glimpses of how rookies will fit with their new teams, and for San Francisco, some have shown they're a cut above the rest. So in this video, we're going to dive into some of those players, but I did leave the injured players like Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing out for now. Speaking of injuries though, San Francisco's right guard, Spencer Burford, broke his hand and will be out around 3 weeks. Burford's always been a promising prospect, but he struggled with inconsistencies, and that's a big reason why San Francisco signed Jon Feliciano last year. And while Feliciano is a savvy vet, he doesn't have those plus traits that you're really looking for out of an offensive lineman. So in hopes of mitigating this weakness, San Francisco traded up in the 3rd round, and with pick 86, they selected Dominic Puny out of Kansas. Coming in at 6'5", weighing 313 pounds, he's a similar weight to San Francisco's other starting left guard, Aaron Banks. And like Banks, I think he fits San Francisco's zone scheme perfectly. He has the ability to pull, and then once in open space, he does a good job of getting his hands on targets. He also offers interesting flexibility, playing left tackle, left guard, and right tackle during his college career. And while it's likely he's going to stay at that right guard position for now, it is nice having a player with that flexibility. And while I've highlighted his ability in the run game, specifically on the move so far, I think he's actually a better pass blocker. Puny has extremely long arms, coming in at nearly 33.5 inches. And while some players don't use their length to their advantage, Puny does. In pass blocking specifically, Puny does an excellent job with his timing to match the defender's rush, so he gains optimal arm extension. And once he connects with that defender, his pop is extremely stiff and often robs the defender of their pass rush move. And these skills are a big reason why Puny didn't give up a single sack last year as Kansas's starting left tackle. So Purdy has to be pretty happy with this investment. But the biggest question has to be if Dominic Puny will do enough to separate himself while the other guards are injured in Jon Feliciano and Spencer Burford. So far, he's had a couple of nice practices, but the biggest challenge will come on Monday where pads come on. Watching Puny's film, I don't think this is going to be an issue though. He's extremely aggressive as a blocker and does an excellent job popping the defender. So heading into this season, I wouldn't be surprised to see Puny starting week 1, especially because he's showing off one of the best skills of an offensive lineman: availability. As much as I like talking about San Francisco's offensive line and Dominic Puny, there are other rookies that have really impressed. Perhaps most notably is Malik Mustafa, the safety San Francisco selected in the 4th round out of Wake Forest. In a similar way to Puny, Mustafa is receiving a big opportunity thanks to the injury of Talanoa Hufanga. And so far, he's done everything humanly possible to show he should be starting for San Francisco. He's San Francisco's fastest safety, running his 40 in 4.52 seconds, and that was with an injured hamstring. And while a lot of rookies need a year in an NFL weight room, that's not Malik Mustafa. He comes in at 5'10", weighing 210 pounds, but that's all muscle, which translated to him putting up 225 pounds 22 times at the combine, which was the most for any defensive back. And while testing is one thing, Malik Mustafa took those abilities to the field last season for Wake Forest, where he led his team with 80 tackles. He had 5 tackles for loss, an interception, and 2 passes defended. Really, outside of his height, I don't know why Mustafa fell so late in the draft. So far for San Francisco in training camp, he's looked like an absolute steal. On day 1, he immediately made his presence felt with an interception. He was starting in the middle of the field. The quarterback was trying to target a wide receiver on the sideline, but Mustafa saw it the entire way, ate up all that space, and then picked him off. And he nearly had his second on the following day when Allen was trying to target Jennings on the sideline. But Mustafa read an open Jennings and then broke on the pass. Outside of his coverage ability, he's done a good job of communicating with the rest of the defense, which is something I was impressed with by Jair Brown during his rookie year. And I think this is an indicator that Mustafa might have a similar type of trajectory. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see Mustafa make an impact sooner rather than later. Outside of Mustafa, San Francisco looks to have found another gem in the running back in Cody Sharrer, the undrafted free agent out of Missouri, which is in stark contrast to the running back they selected in the 4th round, Isaac Ariendo, who's already pulled his hamstring. But even when he was on the field, he struggled to utilize his 4.33 speed effectively and routinely ran in the back of his blockers. Meanwhile, Sharrer isn't nearly as athletic, running his 40-yard dash in 4.6 seconds, and he's a lot shorter, coming in at 5'8", weighing 200 pounds. But what he does have is vision. This vision in part helped Sharrer lead the entire SEC in rushing last year. And like I was mentioning, he's been able to carry that over to the NFL level. This offseason, for instance, he rarely chooses the wrong hole, and then once he gets out in open space, he does a good job of utilizing his blockers to get the maximum amount of yardage. Perhaps my favorite part about Schrader during this offseason though is how consistent he has been. Many rookies will show flashes and then have really bad plays. Meanwhile with Schrader, it's a majority of good plays, whether it be catching a pass in the flat or breaking off a major run. If you were just looking how the rookies performed thus far this offseason, I would say Schrader would have to be at the top of the list, which I think makes him a perfect candidate to replace a guy like Elijah Mitchell. I'm not saying just move off Mitchell for nothing, rather seek a trade that either gives you a draft pick or maybe an offensive lineman. This would also help keep the position relatively cheap behind Christian McCaffrey for the foreseeable future. And as Brock Purdy draws closer to a record-breaking contract, that becomes even more important, especially with his backups. Right now, the battle for the number 2 job is between two veterans, Joshua Dobbs and Brendan Allen. Up to this point, it has seemed like they kinda struggled to get their feet underneath them, but Dobbs did have a nice bounce back performance yesterday. Despite this performance though, I would still say the battle is pretty neck and neck. And because of this, I would like to see Tanner Mordecai get a couple of reps at quarterback. And this isn't just blind faith. So far in individual drills, he's really impressed with his ball placement ability, which was also a strength of his during his college days. He pairs his accuracy with pretty crazy athleticism. Coming out of high school, he was ranked as the 11th best dual threat quarterback in the entire nation. And during his pro day, he continued to show off his athleticism where he ran his 40-yard dash in 4.46 seconds. This isn't to say Mordecai is a completed quarterback, as he does need to work on his deep throw accuracy. But I would argue a lot of his weaknesses pair nicely for San Francisco's offense, and if Greasy can really work on them like he did Purdy, in a couple of years, he could be substantially better than both Dobbs and Allen. Staying with their theme of undrafted free agents, San Francisco picked up an absolute monster in Evan Anderson out of Florida Atlantic University. He's 6'3", weighing 326 pounds, and while it's hard to really measure a defensive lineman without pads on, he's really impressed with his quickness. He's often one of San Francisco's first defensive linemen off the ball, and he's one of their biggest. Even though you don't expect Anderson to be able to get to the quarterback, he did during his time at Florida Atlantic. Across his career, he had 7 sacks with 3.5 last year. The moves that really stand out in this aspect of his game have to be his swim move, his double hand swipe, and his judo throw. But even though I think he's a little bit underappreciated as a pass rusher, his specialty for San Francisco probably will be stopping the run. On his college film and during his pro day, you would see him take on double teams routinely and not get driven back and often win the battles. So headed into these padded practices, if Anderson can prove he can do that at the pro level, he should find a nice home on San Francisco's roster, who's really been hurting ever since DJ Jones has left. But ultimately, these are just some rookies I'm excited to see with pads on and during this preseason period. And I'd like to hear who you're most excited seeing down below. It would also mean a ton to me if you could like and subscribe. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.